man, that I want to really emphasize this.
Yeah.
The journey from nothing to product market fit is an incredibly important, incredibly hard, often very long journey, but it is chapter one. Once you're done with that journey, now you productize, you rinse and repeat, you monetize.
Right.
Okay. You don't go back and go on the journey again. You don't go look for the beginning of the Nile. You found the flipping beginning of the Nile. Start packing up that water and shipping it out to whoever the hell buys bottled water from the Nile.
This is not your typical venture podcast. We assume the listener or the viewer can Google simple things like stage, industry focus, average check size, etc. Guests and interviewers do consume alcoholic drinks during the taping of our show. So we do so responsibly, and we ask that everyone do so as well. So let's begin.
Hello, and welcome to Drinks with a VC. As always, thanks for spending time with us. I'm Vic Laquara, the co-founder and general partner of Green Cow Venture Capital. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-hostess with the mostest, Bree Hansen, who leads biz dev for Burkland, which is a wonderful shop that provides CFO services for startups. Definitely check them out if you're in need. Hey, Bree, how are you?
I'm doing great. Another podcast, another VC, another whiskey.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, our next guest has been a close friend of everyone over at Burkland's. I've really always admired him as really one of the more founder first, no BS kind of venture capitalists out there. I actually got a chat to, a chance to chat with him. Excuse me, I've already been drinking now. At one of the events that you threw during the pandemic, I think it was the sake tasting, and it was just always a lot of fun. I actually am thinking that if he was stuck around just a little bit later that night, he would have been the co-host and not me. And I feel like the podcast probably would have a bigger audience at this point, but whatever. I actually can't think of a better time to have him on, particularly with the shit show of a tech news cycle that we have going on here. And I'm really excited to get his hot takes on all of that. So our guest has had an illustrious career on both sides of the table as a 25-year entrepreneur, 15 years as an investor. In 1993, he founded one of the first e-commerce companies and the first cost per click portal, fashionmall.com, which he took public in 1999. He spent the 2000s founding and acquiring companies in the consumer internet and e-commerce space before becoming a full-fledged investor, where his streak of identifying great opportunities continued as an early investor in companies like DropCam, LendingClub, Kabbage, and Zenefits. He led seed investments for TriplePoint Ventures, co-founded Canvas Ventures, and most recently was a venture partner at one of the most storied venture firms, NEA. He is an avid food and wine enthusiast whose reviews and writings have been featured in the San Francisco Chronicle, The Wine Enthusiast, and Health Magazine, to name a few. He received his bachelor's in entrepreneurial studies from Babson College. He's the only VC that I know that has beaten Jerry Rice in a push-up contest. Please welcome the pride of Sandy Springs, Georgia's Riverwood High School, Ben Narasin.
Did some research, man. And my mom just went home. My mom was visiting for Thanksgiving. She went back to the same house I grew up in.
Yeah. Well, cheers, Ben. Thank you for coming on the show.
Cheers. Tell us what you're drinking today, Ben.
Balvenie single barrel sherry cask. Balvenie is definitely one of my favorites. I have you were kind enough to send this to me, but I do have quite a few of them here as well. We actually just did a really fun event at Money 2020. We got a suite in the Palazzo for 6 of our fintech founders. And I also got 6 really high-end single malts, including a 25-year-old Balvenie, which was my favorite. And then we invited all our friends that were venture folks to come up. And the deal was, for each whiskey you tasted, you needed to hear the story of one of the founders. So whiskey, and I'd introduce them to a founder, and then we'd go through the room. And I thought that was quite a big success. The entrepreneurs were very happy.
Well, that's one of the things I love about you, Ben. You really do have some of the best taste when it comes to food and wine. I've been able to go to a few of your parties. You've been able to host tastings at some of the conferences that we've been at. Tell me how your love for wine and food started.
And by the way, thank you, because Burkland's always been very kind in hosting me on some of my events. And without them, I can't do that, because I don't spend my LP's money on whiskey. They would be very unhappy about that.
Very true.
So when I was young, I actually didn't care about food for a long, long time. When I was an entrepreneur, I had two very simple beliefs. One, I can sleep when I'm dead. And two, lunch is for wimps. I got work to do. So I would eat only to function. I might as, if Soylent had been around, I would have pounded that stuff back. I'd work all day long and then stumble across the street to get a hot dog in New York City. But as I guess the beginning of my appreciation of food came during my IPO roadshow for a very odd reason. I did not like my bankers, and they insisted, as all bankers do, that I paid for everything, including like business class tickets to Europe. And I was like, no, we can fly coach. And they're like, absolutely not. And then one of my friends said, well, they do pay for the meals. So whenever we would go to a hotel that I was paying for, I would immediately go over to the concierge and say, no, and this was the European tour, I need you to find us a dinner tonight at the most exceptional restaurant in the city. Money is no object. And that was my first time to really drill into exceptional food. And some of my aha moments in food were definitely in Europe. The wine part was something that I always thought I would get to. I had this perception in my youth of what I would be, and which is pretty much what I became, which was an entrepreneur from my child. I was an entrepreneur from the age of 12 onward. So I never doubted what I would be in terms of what I would do for a quote unquote living, although, do what you love and you never work a day in your life. But I always felt there were things I would need to learn over time to sort of be a gentleman, a Renaissance man, which was important to me. I didn't want to be a shallow, one-dimensional human. And one of those things was wine. And I thought, well, I'll figure that out later. And so after I took my company public in 99, the bubble burst, but I'd never raised venture capital, so I was able to take it private. This gave me a reasonable amount of liquidity, as it did to all my shareholders. Everybody was treated the same. And I decided that was the time. And so I really started exploring wine. Not uncommon, by the way. A lot of people that have new wealth will go explore wine and then make the tragic, in most cases, mistakes of opening a winery. And that's a great way. The old saying, how do you make a small fortune in wine?
Yep.
Start with a big fortune, right? So instead, I ended up becoming a food and wine writer. Because I also, when I was younger, was always very passionate about writing. But I had to choose on graduation between trying to become the great American novelist or continue to be an entrepreneur. And my belief was, if I was an entrepreneur, I could afford to write. But if I was a writer, I couldn't afford to do anything.
Bingo.
So when
you
I
can
retired,
write when you're old.
Started writing, and the food and wine was the area I targeted.
That's awesome.
That's fantastic. It's funny because typically stories about when you got into food start with when you started having to prepare food for a significant other in your life. Did that play a role in?
Not so much. It did, but what
Yeah.
happened was, so when I took fashionmall.com private, we moved to Incline Village, Nevada.
Yeah.
Wonderful spot.
Yeah.
And that's when I started my journey into food and wine. Two things happened. One, I made friends with a guy who had liquidity and had invested a lot of it into really good wine. And we started a poker group together, and he always brought really good wine, and it turned into a poker and wine group. And so it was a very competitive group too. People would bring their very, very best. Everybody sought to surprise and impress others. And if you didn't, you were harangued. I remember once, when everybody's like, who brought this? Who brought this crap? Like, you don't understand what we're doing here? Nobody's going to drink this. This is garbage. Anyway, so, but he would bring like 1982 first growth. So that elevated the palate quite a bit. The second thing was I went to a food and wine event. You know how they have the food and wine everywhere, food and wine Pebble, food and wine, wherever, Miami. I went to Food and Wine Squaw Valley, and I did some classes. And actually, California guy, Michael Chiarello, was really probably one of my favorites. He did a piece and he said, look, if I teach you a recipe, you can learn to cook one thing. But if I teach you a technique, you can probably cook a dozen.
But how do you choose whether you want to go with a scotch or a nice glass of wine?
So I'm It's very, so in the last month, the only glass of wine I've had was the wine I had with Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
And wine is the right answer. But about once a week or once every 2 weeks, I'll have a dram of whiskey. One of the things I like about whiskey, it's a selfish thing. First of all, whiskey was the first thing I ever drank, and I didn't like it when I drank it because I was 16 and trying to act like a big shot, and I did a shot of a double. Ugh, horrible stuff. But I needed to write an article on it, and so I began to appreciate it. Anyway, but the nice thing is, while Bree did not sponsor my super fancy $23,000 worth of wine, she has on occasion sponsored some very nice bottles of whiskey. And whatever doesn't get consumed is still perfectly good to sit around the house for a year.
Yes.
So, I'm a very occasional cigar smoker, much to my wife's chagrin, which is interesting because it's her dad that got me on the habit. So I don't know why she's mad at me for something her family brought into my life.
Yeah.
Anyway, but, yeah, I will tell you though, just because I don't know if your audience is entrepreneurs or somebody else, one thing that I find these are fun conversations in this format, but every once in a while, an entrepreneur and I will meet and they'll want to spend like 5 or 10 minutes on wine. And I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I don't care. You don't need to butter me up, Val. Let's talk about your business.
Let's talk about the business.
Yeah, let's hear about what you're doing. Like you're interested. Actually, one of my entrepreneurs said, hey, I want to give you and one of my friends, Forrest Basket at NEA. I wasn't working there, but we did a deal together, a present as a thank you for the round. I'm like, oh, that's very nice of you. And he was French. And he said, I want to give you some wine. I was like, it's really not a great idea. Like, that'd be like me saying to Tiger Woods, hey man, I want to give you a golf club.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying I'm the Tiger Woods of wine, but there's been 2 times ever someone has given me a gift of wine where I was like, wow.
Yeah.
We're both the same bottle. SVB gave me a Chardonnay called The Judge by Kongsgaard.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You've told me about this.
There's 6 bottles every year provided in Northern California. That wine is crazy great. But it's funny because I went to lunch and they had this beautiful box and I was like, oh, great. They brought me some wine. It'll probably be the Oracle. Not there's anything wrong with that wine. And I'm like, yeah, this is going in the gift basket. And I open it up. I'm like, oh my God, this is actually a really great wine. I'm actually going to drink this.
Yeah.
It's the only time ever. And so the entrepreneur's like, no, I really want to give you some wine. I was like, well, I guess since you're French, why don't you get something from your neighborhood that I can't get here? And he gave you something that's perfectly nice. But it's like, yeah, no, that's not a useful gift at all. My 2 favorite gifts ever, sometimes when I do speaking gigs, people will send me a thank you present. My 2 favorites, one was this beautiful assortment of dandelion chocolate. Oh my God, that was great.
Oh, so good.
So good. I actually gifted it. These 2 guys were getting married and I brought it and I gave it to them and it was their favorite gift. And I was thinking, well, now they'll obviously put it out on the table like they did with every other gift. And they took it to their room. It's like, damn it. So that was like, bummer, man. I really was hoping this would be a shared event.
Yeah.
It was a place in San Francisco called the Butcher Shop. Somebody gave me a lot of credit there. They do phenomenal meat.
Yeah,
Best
the butcher shop is
hamburger
fantastic.
pretty much I've ever had. It's a hamburger made of regular and Wagyu scraps. It is insanely great. But he's like the soup Nazi. I was like, hey, can I do this? No. Like, well, how about? He's like, no, it is the way it is. This is how it will be. There will be this bun. There will be this lettuce. That's it. No changes, period. You have 2 choices, fat burger or smash burger. That's
Smash
it.
burger.
But, people that do stuff well tend to be that way.
Well, a good friend of mine actually swears by that spot. So shout out to the butcher shop. And
I need to go back there. I was
good.
actually just texting my partner Taylor, like, next time we have a lunch in San Francisco, let's go back there because I'm craving that burger.
Yeah. Well, another thing that you crave often is in the bag that's over to your side.
So in the green one.
In the green one, yes.
Yeah, the Whole Foods bag.
And so there's a Whole Foods bag for all of you that are just listening and not watching the YouTube video that Ben has pulled out.
And
that's
here, a serious cheese.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I like a cheese of a nice format. That is a big cheese.
We've got a big wheel of Stilton cheese, which
God.
I'm told this is a very special type of Stilton cheese that comes around only once a year. And we know you're a cheese aficionado. And while we can't compete with the wine, the folks at Burkland, Bree, Ren, Josh, and co are excited to give you that cheese.
That is awesome. Are we going to eat the cheese while we talk?
You can if you want. I don't know how messy it is to just kind of crack open the
I can, but I'd say
cheese.
pause the video while I go carve a chunk off and put it up.
You can do that.
Yeah, go carve it. Yeah, we pause it.
We can pause it. We'll pause it. Josh,
Right.
pause it.
Give me a second. Let me go prep some cheese. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
So Ben has now rejoined us after cutting open the huge wheel of cheese that we provided him, and I'm interested to see what you think.
I mean, I had a little piece on the way over. I was tasting through it. It's definitely got that pronounced, think about blue cheese of any sort, Stilton, Roquefort, any of them. It's the last cheese you eat. If you're doing a cheese plate, you do not start with the blue. It's also incredibly dangerous with red wine. I've done cheese and wine pairings where we tried through it, and you have blue cheese and red wine, and it's like biting into a piece of tinfoil. It can be so bad. But with whiskey, spot on. And white wines, I think, also good. And these are great crackers too. So thank you.
Fantastic.
Now I've got a big pile of chunks of blue, and as we talk, I'll eat a bit. Can only eat so much of this stuff. It's incredibly rich.
It's true.
I can already tell that some people are going to be watching this podcast, and they're going to be admiring your background, which is not a virtual background like Bree's, but it's a very, very real background. And they're going to be wondering, is that a polo jersey behind you? Is that a jockey jersey?
Yeah, it is. It's actually, so it's my father-in-law. My father-in-law is no longer with us, but he owned horses, and this was one of his jockey's silks. And we have a painting of his horse and the jockey and these silks. So it's really just, I didn't have any place to hang it. I'm going to have it framed in a, whatever it's called, those, I guess, letterboxing or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, and then I can put that next to the portrait of the horse and the. My family didn't have horses. I'm not a fancy person. My wife's family was sort of fancy.
Yeah.
So, I like the fancy stuff. I've got the cap, I've got pictures, I've got all kinds of stuff.
And you've got the fancy rare cheese now. And you yourself, you're sort of a rare cheese, right? Because you are a self. No, you're not stinky. I know you're not stinky. But you're a self-described entrepreneur from the age of 12. And that's kind of a rare cheese for the area that you grew up in Atlanta.
That's fair. It's funny. I was talking to a buddy of mine about sort of like, I think he had a friend who was I'm half Jewish. His friend was all Jewish. And he was like the only Jewish kid in a school of 5,000 in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And he's also the only kid in the community that achieved anything sort of material, at least in his own view. I don't know. I don't know the school. I don't know the kids. But Atlanta, I just had a bug for entrepreneurship since I was young, and I have never really done anything else. I mean, I look at investing as just a pathway, a conduit to live vicariously through my founders. I love working. There's nothing my founders can ask me to do that I'm not going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I've dropped everything to travel to Barcelona to pitch on stage for a founder once and won.
Yeah.
With no notice, and had to cancel a week's meetings, but it was important to what he needed and he couldn't do it. And so, I had to do it. So, ultimately, I'm not at a point in my life where I'm willing to return to the sort of 80-hour a week, all-nighters and red eyes all the time grind, but I don't mind doing it every once in a while when a founder needs it. And I know what their life is like, and their life is incredibly hard. Yeah. So if I can make it a little easier every once in a while, all the better.
What started your entrepreneurial journey, and like what fostered that attitude and the kind of penchant for just building something?
Well, it's interesting. My first business was a comic book dealership. Yeah. And I will always remember what created my interest in doing it. Very simple reality. Every year I would go to Comic-Con and I would go buy comics. And one year I went up to the dealer and I went through his stuff and I said, I'd like to buy this comic, X-Men 92.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, that'll be $10. And while I was standing there getting my money, another kid walked up and said, I'd like to sell you this comic, X-Men 91. He said, I'll pay you $5. And I was like, I'm paying 10. He's paying 5. I'm on the wrong side of the table.
Yeah.
I went back to my dad and I said, Dad, I want your help. I want to go to Comic-Con next year. And he said, oh, no problem. I'll drive you. I said, no. I want to be a dealer. And it's funny. I did not know this story till my wedding day. On my wedding day, my father told me the story, told everybody the story of how I came to him with this request. And he said, oh God, how much? $50. He said, fine. He said, you know what? In his head, he said, this will be a great lesson for little Ben. I'll give him the $50. You go to the dealer, conference and he'll come back and that'll be that. But instead I came back with $1,500 in my paper lunch bag because I didn't think ahead to what it would take to store money. I did spend a year building up inventory and buying and trading. And when I got there, I bought and sold. And, you know, comics in many ways are a commodity, a collectible and a commodity. And so you have to understand certain trends and other realities. But, you know, that was hugely valuable training for me.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it. And I did it for quite a while. I took that $50 loan and turned it into a $100,000 inventory. And then we moved to Japan and I dumped it all at a fire sale price because I didn't care anymore, which was stupid. There's like 2 or 3 transactions I really regret in my life. Selling off my $100,000 inventory at a, you know, pennies on the dollar was definitely not the smart move. IBM would have paid to store those comics. That should have been monetized better.
Sure. And where did you go after the comic book store?
Well, we moved to Japan and I started importing pearls. And for those of you that remember cassette tapes, the TDK metal, which was an actual metal tape, was the highest end, and I got those. And then I came back, went to school, continued the tape business. I don't know, I had all kinds of business. I was a diamond merchant for a couple of years. But in the end, I knew I wanted to be, I didn't use the word entrepreneur. That wasn't a word back then.
Yeah.
It was a word in the dictionary, I'm sure, but it was
Sure.
just, I wanted to be a businessman. I don't know.
Yep.
And I just stumbled around. And then, you know, an epiphany moment for me was when I graduated from college, because I decided I wanted to keep going as an entrepreneur, as we talked about earlier, but I didn't, you know, I'd always loved fashion. I had a lot of interest in, I was like, you know, best dressed in my high school, whatever, silly stuff like that. But I really cared, as my son does, one of my sons does, about clothes and, you know, staying current. And I had an idea for a shirt very similar to this, except for one side was one color and one side was another color, similar to Brooks Brothers, but Brooks Brothers is more extreme.
Yeah.
And I decided, you know what? Well, I might as well do something I'm excited about and passionate about. Let's just see how it does. And I made a couple of samples and I went to all the stores in Harvard Square and I said, would you buy this? And enough people were interested that I ended up starting a business, which I had absolutely no experience in, but it did well. And it created the base. Like every business I've ever had from age 12 onward, I took 100% of the proceeds of the prior business and rolled it into the next one. I often got bored, something that is true of most entrepreneurs, and it's a danger I have to warn them, or I try to help them think through. The problem with being an entrepreneur, there are many, but one of them is entrepreneurs by their nature are extremely smart, inquisitive, and thinking about the future, okay? So they build something, and then they get to product market fit. People are buying the thing they built. They're super excited. But you know what? They've been selling that thing for a while, 2-3 years now. They're bored of it. What's next? Huge problem. The answer isn't what's next. The answer is rinse and repeat. Like, you know, it's not what's new and different. It's you finally found it. It's working. Do that 1,000 times. I often tell the story. I won't tell it here because this will be publicly broadcast. But when I was younger, when I was in the menswear business, I had my first runway show ever. And I will say a now very famous designer walked over to me and said, "Oh, I love your stuff." And I was like, "Ooh, so-and-so loves my stuff. So-and-so thinks my stuff's cool. Isn't that awesome?" 6 months later, I'm with a retailer who's always bought my stuff and he's buying everything except my original designs. And I was like, well, I really appreciate the order. And obviously you're great clients, but you know, my whole basis for this is this thing. I said, "Oh, we got that from so-and-so this year." And that's when I learned about the concept of the knockoff. The reason I bring that up is not just because I'm bitter 40 years later, but because that designer never got bored of my ideas.
Yeah.
He took that company public and he did very, very well by not getting bored of churning out the same thing over and over and over again. I got bored and tried to do new things. Wrong answer. It is so hard to find the thing that works. Once you do, it's like looking for gold in the Amazon. I don't know if there is gold in the Amazon, but you wander around for years. You finally find a vein of gold. Your entire life's mission is to be bored with gold, to just go after that vein and nothing else. You mine that vein until you've exhausted it. You embrace boredom. You use creativity around how you rinse and repeat better, how you optimize everything better. You do not start walking off into the jungle looking for the next best thing. You know, There's lions and tigers and bears out there. Focus on the gold. You found the gold, mine the gold, do nothing but mine the gold, repeatedly mine the gold until there's no gold left, and then go look for platinum.
Yeah. So there's the repeatability of that. What do you say to the companies that then start to branch out into different verticals, different industries altogether? Once they've kind of continued that repeatability.
It's not a problem to sell gold to lots of industries.
Yeah.
That's no issue.
Yeah.
Branching out, first you sell to automotive, then you sell to oil and gas, whatever, all good.
Yeah.
Think of glass, right? Corning.
Yeah.
They made an enormous amount of money during the internet growth period by creating fiber optic cable.
Yeah.
Okay. It's still glass though. They're
Sure.
exceptionally glass. There's no problem with, as your markets mature, offering new product lines.
Yeah.
But while the product is fresh and new, remember, it's boring as can be to you, but 99.7% of the US population and businesses have never seen it before.
Yeah.
So, when you've got 1% market share, you got 89% to go before boredom is relevant.
Yeah.
So offering it into new verticals, fine. New countries, once you've mastered, look, I had an entrepreneur company once, he's like, oh my God, this client of ours wants to expand with us. They want to take us into Europe. The company was like a year old. It's like, wait, what? Oh yeah, it's so exciting. They're gonna do all this stuff. They're gonna put us out there with all the, cover 3 countries. I'm like, so how much of their business in the United States do we have? 10%. Would it be okay if we gave ourselves permission not to leave the US till we at least got half of that? Because come on, man, we got you think it'll be easy. It won't be. You think someone else will deal with it. They won't. It'll be you on that plane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the cost of going there and doing it and setting it up and being surprised by laws you had no idea about, or regulations about people that quit. Now you got to pay them for years and years and years. I mean, it's just when you don't know what you don't know, the equation, it's funny, Taylor and I talk about this a lot. We'll be looking at a business and he might get excited because he's younger and he's really smart, but he sometimes get excited about a category we don't really know, but he's like, but, or this. And I'm like, look, I don't know what I don't know here. You are basically saying to me, Ben, there's a room, it's pitch dark, and there's a big pot of gold in that room. There's also a cat. I can't tell you what kind, but if you go in there might be a lot of riches. Well, there's a lot of types of cats. And if it's a house cat, I'm good to go. But if it's a flippin' tiger that hasn't eaten in a week, I'm dead meat. And I have no idea. I cannot walk into a dark room I don't understand what is in. And I think entrepreneurs, we all overestimate our abilities and underestimate the potential issues that can be created by new markets or climates or countries or whatever else. So, there was a very famous, the single best investor in the mutual fund era back when I was young and in college. I think his name was Peter, I can't remember his last name, he wrote a book. Anyway, his whole thing was stick to your knitting. The companies that did the best, and he's only talking about public companies, are the ones that stick to their knitting. They didn't get distracted. Distraction is a dangerous thing. And it just, there are other ways to stay engaged. How do we fight that battle from 1% to 100?
Yeah.
How do we open up another state? How do we open, there's plenty to be done.
Yeah.
I know that you do have a little bit of lifestyle, and that's hosting many parties and puppies. So can you tell us a little bit about the puppies and how you got into fostering?
So we've always had dogs, but our dog died about 2-3 years ago. And my wife reached out to the group we adopted from. It was a rescue group. And we ended up volunteering for 2 different rescue groups. And so now we've had 160 moms and puppies, and we've had 2 or 3 that have we've gotten them as pregnant dogs and they whelped here. And then when I do a party, I try to always have them around so people can see them. We just joined a 3rd group we volunteer for, and they actually let us get involved in the adoptions. So that's really fun. So right now we have a mama lab and her 6 fat puppies. They're like just chunkers.
Yes.
So sweet. If anybody looks at me on Twitter, follow me at Ben Narasin.
Yep.
And you see my name there. I've posted them. They're so great. The mom, sweetest dog. My wife and I both fall in love with these dogs all the time.
Yep.
But I've become convinced we rent, we don't own. Meaning, if we decide to keep one of these dogs, our ability to foster more gets harder.
Yeah.
So we're 160 dogs in. Some of these dogs, the mom we have now with the 6 puppies, they told us if we didn't take her, she would have been euthanized.
Yeah.
So, I have a soft spot for pups.
We'll definitely put the link into the episode description. Let's move on.
All right. This is a game I created. So
Yes.
here at Drinks of the VC, we're more variety show than professional podcast. I think it's all the alcohol. Anyway, we have a little game that we want to play since you're a D&D fan. I've always loved the alignment chart. So first off, where would you put yourself on the alignment chart?
Probably chaotic good. I'm a little obsessive with fairness and
That's me too. Yeah, you and I that's why we like each other, Ben. So we wanted to play a game where we picked out some famous VC and tech CEOs that we'd like you to put on the chart.
We love it. We
Ouch.
also decided.
Parker's not a VC. He's one of my founders.
Well, yes.
VC and CEOs.
Yes.
All right, fine.
VCs and CEOs.
That's
and
tough. That's tough.
we're clearly.
I might
picking
actually
on-
even be lawful good. I'm pretty by the book. I'm very much by the rules. Oh, geez, these are. I mean, I love Parker. I don't really know how I would categorize him. He's probably chaotic neutral. I like Chamath. I mean, we don't spend that much time together, but I always get a kick out of when I see him, and he's sort of man.
So for all of you listening in only, we've got a slide up with Jason Calacanis, Ben himself, Elon Musk, Chamath Palihapitiya, Mark Andreessen, and Parker Conrad, and having Ben decide where they are on the alignment chart from D&D.
I'm going to give Jason and Parker chaotic neutral. Man, I don't know. Chamath, the poker in him. I'm
And
almost tempted to put him in neutral evil.
and we
I mean,
decided
he's
to
not
pick
evil. I
on-
don't really think Chamath is evil. The problem is he's definitely chaotic. So maybe I'll give him chaotic neutral. But then again, the SPAC thing that was pretty. I'm gonna have to. I think the SPACs are going to push him into chaotic evil.
There
Or
we
no,
go.
maybe not. Chaotic neutral or neutral evil. I mean, look, I've only met Mark once, so I'm gonna reserve judgment on him. So we'll just leave him out of the equation. Parker, I said we'll go with chaotic neutral. I don't think Parker has any challenges. I just think he's a super bright, incredibly driven person. And Elon, he's as chaotic as it gets. But he's probably chaotic neutral. I think he generally doesn't have any ill will. He intellectually thinks he's doing the best he can, and I don't think he's necessarily wrong. It's one of the biggest challenges I think with a lot of the tech billionaires in general is that they're in many ways, I'm not saying Elon is, but they're amazingly naive because their money protects them from so much that the bigger picture is sometimes lost on them.
Yeah.
But that's more like I'm thinking more along the lines of Zuck. So.
Well, look, as always, we still want to reward you, and as a reward, we're going to put up a slide to show you what you've won today. There you go.
Oh,
Surprise!
My son for my birthday once got me my Dragon Forge Paladin as a Hero Forge miniature.
Fantastic.
I don't think I have it in here. I just have miniature me. I have miniature me. And I have one of my original painted figures from my youth. I used to paint and sell D&D miniatures. That's one of my,
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I got me from some conference.
That's fantastic.
My signature pink pants, but they can't do the glasses. So
Yeah. Well, you can forge a new miniature now to bring to the table
Awesome.
at the next
Love
D&D challenge night. I will also say, I probably know a handful of adults that still play D&D, and I think people will be surprised. Won't be surprised to hear sort of the strategy behind it and the strategic thinking, and the imagination that you need to have and possess. I think there's another element that's sort of the sports analogy that I have is look good, play good, right? But It brings up another facet of yours that I think we'd like to touch on. You've had a ton of experience not only managing technical folks, but creative folks. And it strikes me as, for anyone that's not a portfolio company founder of yours, what is the one bit of advice that you would give to founders out there that are managing technical and creative teams and trying to do both?
Yeah, it is when I was running my company, it was sort of half tech and half creative, and that's just not easy. It's sort of its own little unicorn reality.
Mhm.
I mean, the thing I'll often tell my founder, like I have a founder that's got a company worth several $billion, and I still, whether he thinks it was coaching or not, we'll try to coach him on understanding that the language of sales and the language of engineering are not Southern English and Northern English.
Yeah.
They're Latin and English. I mean, they're, or whatever. They might be related in some form. They're Portuguese and Spanish. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're not. And it is often the most common thing you see in Silicon Valley startups is engineering-led companies that will grow the engineering team to a headcount of maybe 20 or more and not have a single salesperson in the org. One of the most interesting experiences I had these, remember my whole I have to see you once a quarter, you can see me anytime you want thing.
Yeah.
Well, I had funded these two brilliant engineers out of Stanford. They had a really smart business idea. They built it. It worked. And they reached out and they said, hey, can we get together? We know you're all about sales. We'd love your help thinking about how to sell this product now that we've built it and it works. And we came over to my office and we're about 20 minutes in and I was like, all right, here's the thing. You're asking me to teach you how to sell. You are going to suck at selling. Your world is code, compile, debug, repeat. Like there's an end.
Yeah.
You code it and you run it and it works or you debug it.
Yeah.
That's not sales. Sales is rejection, 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 glimmer of hope, crushing defeat, rejection, rejection, glimmer of hope, land a deal, go back to the beginning and start all over again.
Yeah.
We're going to be terrible at it. It doesn't match your DNA in any possible form. The number one piece of advice I can give you, hire somebody that knows how to do it and have them build the org to do it. You should not try to learn what you are not good at. You should learn how to be better at what you're great at. NEA got me a coach early on because I asked for some help on some areas where, I'm a pretty, as you said, strong cheese. Well, NEA is not a strong cheese. And I would always say NEA is like the classic white shoe firm. As a full-time investor there, I was there all the time. It's a great group of people. I love them. But I was blue suede shoes in a white shoe firm. And so I was like, hey, I need to figure out how to work around this a little bit. And it's interesting because the coach I got said, you know what? We're not going to focus on trying to fix your weaknesses. That's really hard. We're just going to focus on figuring out and enhancing your strengths. Yeah. But I don't think those are the things that are going to get me in trouble.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the end of the day, if you're strong enough at the things you're good at, the other stuff will take care of itself because you'll hire somebody else to do it. The most important thing an entrepreneur can do, whether it's hiring at a senior level or building a board, is to bring on people that are better than them at things they don't do. Yeah. These people should not look anything like them. I say to entrepreneurs all the time, if you're getting another person like you on your board, you might as well buy a tape recorder and a mirror. You don't need another you. Now, if it's you 20 years later where you can learn all kinds of things on a faster scope, okay, maybe. But like you've got black spots, you've got blind spots and stuff that you don't know how to do. Like that's what you need. Get the people that know what you do not.
Yeah. Like, well, let me dive into that a little bit because look, Tenacity Venture Capital, you are focused on pre-Series A companies. And oftentimes founders, majority of times, founders are on an island having to develop a narrative that they then pitch to you and get financing. And it's a form of sales.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there's got to be a certain threshold that you expect in terms of being able to build a narrative.
That's fair. So the way I look at it, I used to think I overvalued the importance of storytelling. And then I came to realize you cannot overvalue the importance of storytelling. Storytelling is how you hire. It's how you raise money. It's how you win customers. It's how you do PR. It's how you take your company public. Storytelling is critically important. And storytelling is an important part of sales, but it is not on its own necessarily purely sales.
Yeah.
So the tactical reality of sales is different than sort of the, one of the nice things about being a venture person, a VC, is that you can fund brilliant people with enormous opportunities ahead of them and great ideas. I always say I need 5 things to make an investment. Bree's heard this before. People, a great idea, and a huge market if it works.
Yeah.
The people are phenomenal. I once had an entrepreneur pitch me, and he was just not anything like the phenotype that you expect in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley's high energy, usually a reasonable amount of ego or perceived ego. It's usually BS, but there's just a lot. And this guy was just mellow. Normally these people are cranking it up to 11 and he's hanging out at 2.
Yeah.
And about halfway through, I'm just like, this guy really got what it takes? Because now I'm inferring from his lack of energy and non-exciting pitch that this guy's just not offering me something I'm excited about buying.
Yeah.
Then as he got deeper into his product and the category he's in, it was like, oh my God, this is one of those slow, still waters run deep thing.
Sure.
I knew his category down to the tiniest detail.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a Midwesterner, so maybe that was part of the influence. But like at the end, I was like, this guy knows more about this than I could ever learn if I spent the rest of my life trying to figure this stuff out.
Sure.
So I did fund him, and he did a great job of recruiting.
Yeah.
That business didn't work out. He started a second one. It seems to be doing much better. So, you can take a shot on, I'll tell you another learning that's very related to this. Anytime an investor decides to put themselves into the deal, they've already made a mistake. Because I don't care how active you are. Every VC talks about how they like to help, how they're there.
Yeah.
Oh, give me a break. I would argue, if you asked all my founders, I've had many founders tell me I am their number one most valuable investor, most engaged. But I already told you, I have to see them once a quarter, then call me anytime I want. That's a low bar.
Yeah.
That's like once a quarter? Come on, what is that? Less than 1% of the time? Like you're not there enough. I had an entrepreneur that literally said, I did office hours in San Francisco once a week for a while. He said, I want to have office hours with you every week. And I was like, oh, that's great. I felt sort of like, oh, good. That's ego.
Yeah.
Also terrible. If your entrepreneur needs you that badly, they don't have what it takes.
They don't have what it takes either. Yeah.
That one it didn't go to 0. It went to 4 cents on the dollar, I think. That's how much I got back. For every 100 grand I put in, I got $4,000 back.
Yeah.
So, you cannot put yourself in the deal. You cannot assume that what you have, you can teach them.
Yeah.
Help. But net, you can have something missing from the deal as long as they are looking to fill it.
Sure.
You cannot, my job is not to tell anybody to do anything. I am a teller of stories to try to help illustrate a point. I hope I'm a source of trusted counsel and advice, and I've had plenty of people tell me that is the case.
Yeah.
And I try to be a high moral bar for them to bounce things against, because my favorite reference ever, someone reached out when I was I think it was at NEA, and I was considering an investment in probably a Series B, and I would have been a board member. And they reached out to a guy I'm on the board of, and they said, tell me about Ben. And he shared this with me. He said, Ben is our moral compass. And I love that, because I do have perhaps a little bit of a fixation on doing the right thing. Like, I know life's not fair, but I am. And if I can lead that life, then maybe that makes the world just a little bit better. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so let's take that and take your learnings now, because there are a lot of parallels to the .com burst and with what we are experiencing right now. I think some parallels.
Investor.
Yeah, and if you're a crypto investor, especially, how are challenges? Yeah, how are the challenges different this time around?
Well, I mean, it's funny. I was on CNBC doing that morning show with Andrew Ross Sorkin, who I really like.
Yeah.
In the first bubble, and I don't know the guy's name, but he's sort of sleepy until he attacks like a bear. Anyway, and he's like, "Why is it any different?"
Yeah.
I was like, "It's entirely different."
Yeah.
When I was having breakfast the day after he left his job with the then CEO of AIG a year or two ago. And he said, Ben, when you took your company public in 99, AIG was one of the top 5 most valuable companies in the world.
Yeah.
AIG, ExxonMobil, Shell. You go back to 99, you go back to pre-bubble. The most valuable companies in the world were these massive antique businesses, oil and gas, insurance, reinsurance. And today they are all tech. You have the birth of and the very first multiple $trillion companies.
Sure.
The total scope and scale and size has gotten so much bigger because of very basic things in many ways. I know I'm oversimplifying it. One, the technology is applicable to almost everybody in the world that has either business or personal life that can be connected to a computer, which is most people. 2, it doesn't cost much to scale. You sell it to one person on day 1, 100 people on day 2, 1,000 people on day 3, 1 million people on day 4, 100 million people on day 5. Pay Amazon some more for the servers. Yeah. Back in the day, if you were a robber baron and you wanted to build your oil empire and you went from 1 barrel to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 to 1 million, man. I mean, I'm not a fan of the robber barons. They did some incredibly evil stuff, but I do love one story. I don't know who it was credited to, unfortunately. Back in the day, there were a finite handful of people fighting for the oil supremacy of the United States. And one of them figured out that all oil was transported in barrels. And there were only 2 people that made barrels. So he bought one of them. Yep. And he just basically locked up that choke point. And all of a sudden, it's him and one other guy. So, all his competitors got cut out. Sorry, we don't have any barrels for you anymore. Amazing. But it's still a long, hard road to get from there. I was talking to somebody just today. I'm going through a challenging transaction. And the challenge is coming from the old school source of capital. And the other side of the transaction, the new source, meaning you can become a billionaire off of technology without doing any evil. You can build great things. People can buy them and you can create enormous wealth. But, the old saying was a true fortune could not be created without a crime. And back in the day, a lot of bad stuff happened to get the people the kind of money they had to get to the same level, right? So things have changed for a lot of people, but not for everybody.
Yeah.
So can I ask you a real quick question then? Do you think that Live Nation owning Ticketmaster is that same type of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a choke point. It's also a monopoly, but it's also an integrated business. So what are your thoughts about that?
I think we are in an era now where companies have gotten so big that most growth of huge companies, particularly non-tech huge companies, is through acquisition and consolidation. Sure. It's the reality of it. I mean, it's like, we're not going to get there, but you could see a world in the future where there were 100 companies that just rolled. It's like roll-ups. Yeah. And part of it is because the economics work so well. Roll-ups work exceptionally well because, even at a small scale, let's say you buy a domain name hosting company that's doing $2 million of revenue and a $500,000 of EBITDA. Maybe it's trading for 2 times EBITDA, but you buy 10 of them. And now you got 20 million of top line. And all of a sudden it's trading for 5 times EBITDA or 10 times EBITDA. And you just, you get paid for doing it. And now the private equity folks sell the private equity folks. So a lot of growth of mature businesses is coming out of acquisition and consolidation. Yeah. I don't really have a point of view of whether our government in the EU does a good job of policing that. They fight some really weird stuff that I don't understand. Like, why do you care? And then maybe they let a transaction go through that is actually feels like it's pretty monopolistic.
Well, I guess it depends on where they're investing, right?
Yeah. Well, all VCs want to invest in monopolistic opportunities, by the way.
Right. Yeah, Peter Thiel, 0 to 1.
Google is a monopolistic opportunity, not because they bought everybody else and, it's because they outcompeted everybody. Yeah. I'm fine with any meritocratic win, even if that win means there's 1. Yeah. I mean, there's not really 1, there's 1.2 if you count Bing.
Yeah. Well, you alluded to this, right? So you were talking about fashionmall.com and going public and then taking it private again in 2002, I want to say. I'm interested in how you learned both tactically and kind of strategically to thrive during that period, and what advice you give entrepreneurs during this recessionary period.
So I would say the number one thing that helped us is that we thought differently. Yeah. So I've been told we invented cost per click in 1994. Mm-hmm. Most people were selling on a CPM basis. I bought 12 companies that all had a massive amount of venture backing for peanuts. And they were 11 out of the 12 were profitable in under a year under my stewardship, because we took their stupid business model and converted it into a CPC model. And we already had buyers for that CPC and we made money on it.
Yeah.
So I think two things. One, thinking differently can be an enormously powerful thing. And two, I think people massively underestimate the value of metaphor. It's obvious to people now that cost per click makes sense. But in the 90s, nobody knew. When I started Fashion Mall, we didn't know how to price it. We're like, well, I guess it's like a mall. Maybe we should sell them a store. If we're going to sell them a store, should we price it on a per square foot basis? What's the equivalent of per square feet on the internet? And then we'd say, well, you can get a store that's this many pages, whatever. That didn't work. So then other people went with billboards. That's CPM. And then a guy, not me actually, somebody else said to me one day, why don't you just put a turnstile in front of the stores? I was like, what do you mean? He said, well, you're the most targeted site in the world. You get more people than Yahoo, AOL, and the site combined. Why don't you just build them the store for whatever it costs and then just put a turnstile in front? Whenever somebody walks through it, you charge them. You literally charge somebody to walk in the door. It's like, that's a great idea. And when we wrote it in a contract, it was cost per click. You come into the site, you go into your area, you choose your store, bang. Awesome. But that's a metaphor. It's not a pre-existing, preordained structure. It's just something we came up with. And it changed the world for Google, right? I wish I had understood, as Jeff Bezos did at the time, and I'd met him a few times, what a business process patent looked like. Can you imagine? I mean, I've done really well, but if I had a business process patent on cost per click, oh my God, I just sit here and wait for the checks to roll in every week from Google. I could make as much as I made in my entire lifetime in a single month, just getting the checks from Google.
Yeah.
But, you know, say, Libby, I did fine. I shouldn't complain. Life is not about having what you want. It's about wanting what you have. That is my definition of happiness. I'm going to share that. There we go. There's my Buddha moment.
We're going to put that in the episode description, I'm sure. So if I'm understanding this correctly, number one, take advantage of the repeatability, the necessity of your product. Number two,
just understand that I want to really emphasize this.
Yeah.
The journey from nothing to product market fit is an incredibly important, incredibly hard, often very long journey, but it is chapter one. Once you're done with that journey, now you productize, you rinse and repeat, you monetize.
Right.
Okay. You don't go back and go on the journey again. You don't go look for the beginning of the Nile. You found the flipping beginning of the Nile. Start packing up that water and shipping it out to whoever the hell buys bottled water from the Nile. So, you know, it is what I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand. They get the pain and process is so convoluted and long in the beginning, they get used to it. Yeah. But the thing is, then you cross the finish line, or at least you cross a Rubicon. You don't have to worry about that pain anymore. You paid the price. You paid the pain. Now reap the benefit of it, right? That is a critical thing. And I think a lot of people just don't get that their life has changed. They fundamentally have gone from Hyde to Jekyll. Yeah. Okay. You spent all the time as the monster. You stumbled around the streets. It's a weird analogy. I don't know. I'm playing with it now. I'm making it up as I go. Yeah. But now you're the doctor and now you get to lead a normal life. Let's go with the good old solid business of moving this thing forward. This.
Well, and speaking of good old businesses, I want to bring it back to a comment that you kind of made offhand around crypto. You know,
the three things I don't invest in.
Yeah. So you, me both. I think we share very similar viewpoints of crypto. Really, just recently you tweeted, look, in a decade, and I'm paraphrasing here, has there been a single viable example of crypto other than an instrument for speculation?
It's been materially changed by crypto that isn't a speculative reality.
Thank you. Yes, that's right.
I made my first investment in a blockchain-based company. A brilliant woman started a company, which was in essence, in 2014, I made the investment to do basically blockchain as a service, AWS for the blockchain. And I thought, wow, anybody that touches this should use her, not do their own thing.
Yeah.
Now, the reality is that Ethereum filled that role as far as I can tell. But I made my first investment in 2014. I had a Bitcoin and bourbon lunch in 2013, and yet I've never invested in the category because I believe the same thing is true today that was true in my 2013 lunch. It's a speculative instrument, and I am not a speculator.
Yeah.
I don't trade gold, I don't trade currencies, and I don't trade crypto.
Yeah.
And I'm open. Until recently, I was open-minded to hearing the pitches, but in the end, I was like, I'm just wasting everybody's time here, my own and yours.
Yeah.
During the ICO bubble, oh my God, it was just like, yeah, no, no, and no. I listened to hundreds of pitches, but it's just not. Look, I was at a conference. I was at the Bessemer Seed Summit, and we broke up into these side groups, and one of them was crypto and fintech. And I thought, well, fintech matters to me. I'll go to that. And we started talking about crypto, blah, 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 Web3.
Yeah.
Okay, stop. I don't buy the premise of the name Web3.
Yeah.
Okay. The web, the thing that got me from my profitable business into this risk it all opportunity that has made me who I am today, changed literally everything. Everything. Name one thing the web hasn't changed. I mean, it's all been changed. I don't know, maybe digging coal out of the earth hasn't been changed by the web, but the sale of the coal
probably has.
Oh, it has.
Right? Everything,
It has.
everything. Stocks,
There you-
media, television, movies, music. You touch it,
Right.
it's been changed by the web. Now, name all the things that crypto has changed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just scoping out though a little bit, if you're looking at blockchain, is the technology as a whole going to be swept out with kind of this tidal wave that's taken out crypto thus far? Or do you see entrepreneurs solving real problems with blockchain?
Well, I've been
in
waiting for them to
novel
solve real
ways?
problems with blockchain for, I guess it's 8 years now. So
Yeah.
my first investment was in 14. The problem is blockchain is generally slower and more expensive than a proprietary database.
Yeah.
I think, one person in that conference did gaming. And I said, you know what? I think having your game assets on a distributed ledger could be valuable, but it's no more valuable than, look, I've heard plenty of pitches of, we can put your Hearthstone's cards into a blah, blah, blah. We can take your Fortnite blah, like whatever. You need the problem with at the time I said, okay, fine, maybe gaming. But then what I realized later is gaming only works if the game is awesome. And then it happens to be built on the blockchain. Good
Sure.
luck with that. There's an investor that likes to say, and I love this saying, we underwrite to one miracle. Well, having a game that's awesome and it's back on the blockchain, that's two miracles. Good luck with that. I was just rewatching Top Gun 2, and they're like, we need two miracles, but it's a movie, so they get them both.
So they get them both. Yeah.
I just don't see how you build Supercell or King, and just fortunately for you, it also happens to be blockchain based. Maybe you do, and that will be an awesome thing.
Yeah.
But the portability of assets in game has been something that players have wanted for a long, long time.
Sure.
Blockchain gives you the tools to do it, just like a hammer and nails and wood gives me the tools to build a house.
Yeah.
What do you think the chance is that that's going to happen?
Yeah.
Does this look like a house banding like me?
No.
I can't even, I worry about, I don't even put up my own smoke alarms anymore. I'm so worried that I'll screw something up. I have a guy that helps me with this stuff. But
To our listeners only, Ben just raised his hands up. They were very nice, soft looking hands.
these
They
aren't-
didn't look
these aren't-
like hard manual labor type
my
hands.
wife likes my hands because my fingers are long. And so I used to hold them up a lot because she said
They're not dainty.
I
I'm not
should
going to
play
say
the
they're
piano.
dainty, but
No,
yeah,
they look.
I'm not saying they're dainty.
So if I
strong
were
like
to
gold.
if I were to apply your metaphor concept to both blockchain and crypto, because I was kind of doing that during this conversation, Ben. I mean, crypto kind of reminds me, like you were saying, of the speculative banking in the early Americas, where all these people are going west and these banks are popping up, and they all went bankrupt because you can't have a million different currencies. It just doesn't work. But with blockchain, I feel like there could be some business applications.
You know what I think it could be really interesting? I was thinking about this recently. I was doing a secondary transaction, one of my favorite companies, setting up an SPV, and I realized, it's an opaque situation, and private shares would certainly benefit from the transparency of the chain of ownership and the prices established for the shares that were sold, right? So I can see that. I can see any illiquid asset. I mean, I'm not negative in total. It just hasn't happened yet. Like, here's the thing.
Right.
Let's say
I agree too.
if you wanted to buy a 1/1000th slice of the Mona Lisa, let's say I had the Mona Lisa, or let's just say I had this beautiful bottle of wine. You don't want to buy a $6,000 bottle of wine. but you'd like to invest in a $6,000 bottle of wine. So you'd like to spend $100 to buy a fractional ownership of this bottle.
Yeah.
My question is, why is that not better in an Oracle database? Meaning it's about trust. If you don't trust the seller of that wine, you got an issue. So the trustless distributed thing, does that really matter?
Yeah.
I don't know if it does, but I do think having something like, with illiquid assets that could be custodied and always transparently viewed. Now, the buyers and sellers might not want that, because it appears to me that in this market, there's a much, it's not like a public stock where there's a 1/8 of a dollar spread. Like the spread on private stocks is pretty big. You're talking about stuff that's selling for 75% discounts to the last round sometimes. Maybe somebody's selling it for 50. That's a big spread.
So I want to play a fun game with you, Ben. It's called Hot Takes with Ben. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, we are going to give you the name, a name or a thing, and I want you to just say the first word that comes to mind. Here we go. Elizabeth Holmes.
Not a fan, but I feel like maybe she got pretty brutalized in this whole situation, and I worry that it could have some negative impact on other adventurous souls. I'm not saying that's all she was, but it feels a little bit like you took a hammer to a splinter in your hand.
Do you feel like 11 years in prison is too long? I know you're not.
I mean, corporate malfeasance on its own is generally not punished in that way. I guess she's getting a Martha Stewart-like experience at least.
Yeah.
Right. They're putting in a club fed. Not that makes it easy. I mean, 11 years seems pretty extreme.
It seems pretty extreme. Yeah.
I'm not saying she should have gotten off of house arrest. I don't think that would be fair either, but like, ouch.
Yeah.
Oh, here, you want to know a quick little story on this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So it is not clear to me that there wasn't value in what she created. And I will tell you why. A friend of mine loaned that company, when it got into distress, $100 million. It's not a personal friend, but they work at an organization. $100 million against the assets and technology licenses and patents that they possessed. So when I read Bad Blood, I reached out to my buddy. I'm like, oh, looks like you took a bath. He's like, oh, no, we made money. We sold those. We got paid more than we wrote. Well, so if they were, now this is, secondhand news to me. So, but if they made more than $100 million on the patents that Theranos held, that means there was something there. Now, it wasn't what they claimed it was, but maybe it was good enough for 1 or 2 blood tests. I don't know.
Yeah.
Bottom line, it wasn't an absolute, complete, and total scam. It was a magnified version of what the reality was. Now, I think the reason that people hated it so much is that, in theory, you're dealing with people's lives. This is a health and med thing. And, when some SaaS startup says, we'll increase the speed of your web performance by 42%, it's only 12, nobody dies. And so that is the reason why this was such a lightning rod for attention, and rightfully so. But 11 years does feel pretty brutal.
Yeah.
How long did the Enron people get? I don't know.
I don't know. We'll have to.
I mean, Bernie Madoff got a really long time. Didn't he die in prison? I don't even know.
He did die in prison, and gosh.
We'll see what good old Schlubby boy gets.
Oh, speaking
of, what is your take on Sam Bankman-Fried? Yeah.
But separate from that, when you got whatever $1 billion in the bank to cover your 9 or 12 billion, I get how it works to have a bank. I get that when you have a bank, you don't keep all the money in the bank. My father-in-law ran a bank. We went through this. I considered opening or buying a bank.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like, ultimately the ripple effects here will be quite painful. Yeah. There'll probably be, it feels to me like Coinbase could be in an interestingly positive buy situation right now. I don't know enough to know, but it feels like, one of the things that happens, what happened to us, our stock, I own 51% of our company, publicly traded company. It was trading for 30 cents on the dollar in cash. I had, let's call it $10 in cash. Entire company was trading for 3.
Yeah.
There were 3 buyers of my stock, me, 2 guys, one guy that knew me, and 1 smart hedge fund guy. I tried to buy all the stock from them. They said no. I went to one. I'm like, dude, you got to sell me your stock. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm like, why not? Come on, man. It's trading for 3. I'll pay you 6. He's like, no. I'm like, why not? He said, Ben, I know you. There is no way you are spending this money stupidly. You will find a way to get this money into the shares holders' hands.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. We dividended out 3 times the share price in a single day. But here's the point. During the collapse, during the bubble bursting, nobody paid attention. It just all washed down.
Yeah.
So I assume there's some buying opportunities. Coinbase may or may not be the only one.
Yeah.
But like, you know, what was it? The guys that declared again today? Another bankruptcy today. Beat
Yes.
Block. I don't know.
BlockFi. BlockFi.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Block. I mean, there's so much. It's just crazy. I was having. It's not an okay story. I can't tell that. Anyway,
Well, you know,
I
so
think I would look. You know, he's been invited to speak at a Deal Book, which is Andrew's thing. The guy that I
yes,
like,
that's right.
Man, it's like funny. Jason was tweeting out. I bet the FBI picks him up on the way out. I don't think they can because I don't think he's been charged with anything. But
Right.
that's just another example of the hubris and arrogance and stupidity. I mean, the guy's not even smart enough to know how stupid he's being. Come on.
I think a lot of people, we talked about, Theranos and now Sam. I think a lot of people bring up Ross Ulbricht, who was the founder of the Silk Road website, who got he got a life sentence in prison. And, you know, obviously there are different degrees of all of these things. And I think you were very apt in mentioning, look, the far-reaching effects of a Theranos not performing properly.
But I wouldn't put her
far
in the
outweigh.
same. You know, like there's one thing when I don't think I have a really, I haven't lied since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I think lying is just selling a slice of your soul at a time. And I try really, really hard to do the right thing in any situation.
Yeah.
It's cost me a lot of money to do the right thing in a bunch of situations. But having said that, I don't think corporate financial malfeasance is a life sentence sort of thing. I think, you should make restitution as best you can. And I think you should, there's going to be consequences. But, the Silk Road was, all it is all the evils that the world has ever provided in a digital marketplace provided online. I mean, if you were running a den where people could come in and hire assassins, buy heroin and do everything else, and you got arrested and put in jail for life, I don't think anybody would blink.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what? You sold off 17 assassinations this week, and that was a good year, good week for you. Like, but I think people probably, people massively, it's like the old saying about finance, that people will tend to overestimate the short-term impact and underestimate the long-term.
Yeah.
And I think in the Theranos case, it is likely that people probably inferred a lot more damage than was actually there. I'm not saying there wasn't damage. I'm not saying it wasn't inappropriate. I'm not saying it wasn't a higher bar.
Yeah.
But, I don't know the numbers, and I'm obsessive about, and I don't care enough about it to go figure it out. But, I'm intrigued by people tend to ignore data. Let's look at the data. What were the outcomes that were created by this exaggeration of ability?
Yeah.
Now, if people died because of it, then 11 years might be too little. But I don't know that that's ever been shown to have happened. I think what happened was, instead of a prick, you had to have a full needle of blood drawn. And that sucks. 11 years because I had to put a needle in you? Seems a little rough.
I think though that people didn't
5.5, that's the number.
They didn't get I think 5.5 is right. But I think it's because people died of cancer because they didn't know they had cancer because her blood test.
That's the thing. If that happened, that is a very different reality. But I'm not sure that
I don't know. I think that was the inference.
The biggest challenge with this sort of stuff.
Hearsay.
The media will often go into great depth of what could happen.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it could. I could take a bite of this cracker. It could shatter. It could embed in my throat. I could have so much blood flowing through my throat that I choke on it. And while you're watching me, I could die on the screen, all because you sent me this cracker. Now, that is theoretically possible. I think the likelihood of it is probably 1 in a million. So theoretically possible isn't relevant.
Yeah.
Actually viably happening or happened is. You know, it's funny, like I was thinking about this point I made about the $100 million plus payout for her tech. I have to imagine they never presented that, because if they had, like, then, you know, I should have, hey, I got some information that might get your client a little better treatment.
We'll send this to
$10
her
million.
her attorneys on her appeal.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Like if they're watching, hey, if you're watching this, well, I can hook you up with the right people for the right payout. You know, I am an expert witness now, as of this moment, if you hire me to be one.
Yes, exactly. All right, let's jump through these next couple of examples. So metaverse.
Well, here's the problem. There's room for a metaverse or more than one. It's just not going to be Zuck's.
Yeah.
Zuck's metaverse is ugly. And so I play Call of Duty.
Yep.
Call of Duty. The reason I started playing Call of Duty, I've always been a video game guy, but Call of Duty, I think it was Black Ops 2 came out 6, 8, 10 years ago. And I read a story that they had spent $1 billion on the code. And I said, you know what? If they spent $1 billion on the code, I'm spending $50 on that disc. And I went out and I bought it, and I've been hooked ever since. And I played every Call of Duty. I'm fortunate to have a friend from the video game industry that gets me code. So I only had to pay for one of the 10 years of games I've played, which is awesome. I love that. A friend of mine today was like, he said, I was bragging about you today. I was like, really? Why? He said, well, I was telling my friends that you are the cheapest rich person I know. I was like, yes, that is me. But here's the thing. My mother was in town for Thanksgiving. I was playing Call of Duty, and she said, where was this filmed? I was like, Mom, it's a video game. She's like, I know, but where was it filmed? Was it in LA? It was like, this is computer generated. She said, no, they had to have used real things for this. The visuals are so compelling. How do you go backwards to the beginning of time when it comes to visuals? I haven't seen a game as ugly as the metaverse in 30 years. I mean, Nintendo jumping around Mario's were more engaging.
Yeah.
But my point is, when the metaverse works, it'll work through the lens of the already created avatars that are out there right now that people like. I don't customize my avatar. I don't care. I don't like need to fancy him up. I happen to play a male avatar, but I pick his gun. I pick all the attachments that go on the gun. I constantly upgrade the gun. I have the backup gun. I have this, like, people put an enormous amount of time into these avatars. Let those avatars go live somewhere. I would rather wander around a Call of Duty map. They're huge, and run into other people than wander around some stupid block-based thing. But they are fundamentally different businesses. Here's the thing that I look at with I don't generally short stocks. So I'm not short Facebook, but I did sort of a semi-synthetic, which is basically I sold naked calls at a higher price because I had so little confidence in the metaverse. Here's the issue. Mark is, I don't know Mark, I've met him once, so calling him Mark's probably unfair. Mr. Zuckerberg is suffering from the same fallacy as many incredibly successful, incredibly wealthy people. They believe it was not just luck. And it wasn't just luck. It was enormous skill, enormous drive, and perfect, flawless timing, which is also another word for luck. Guess what? Everybody wants to prove once is lucky, twice is good. Yeah, it's not going to work. You change the world once in a bigger way than almost anybody in all of history. You're not going to do it again. It's like when John Doerr decided that green tech, clean tech was the thing and abandoned technology investing. He's back now, mainly through Mamoon. But no, you are not going to have an act 2 that's as big as act 1. Everybody wants one. Everybody believes they can have one. And almost everybody is wrong. And he is wrong here, and it's going to be painful. Long way to go, and it's down.
Let's fast forward to the last name, Elon Musk.
Oh, he doesn't bug me at all. He drives my son insane. But, he's a highly motivated, never sleeping, hardworking guy. I'll be fascinated to see if, so I have boy, girl, boy. My youngest is the one that really does not like Elon. And he's also the most sensitive soul. He's the kindest person I know. But he's very much of he's 19 and he's reminiscent of his generation. It will be fascinating to see how Twitter does with, call it 75 to 250 to 500 hardcore people versus 7,500 what might be termed snowflakes. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I think I'll take the 250 hardcores
Yeah.
because, like, it's funny. I've had a lot of companies sell, and I often will talk to the entrepreneurs about the sale. I was just having this conversation yesterday, and I said, look, they're like, yeah, but I don't know. I'm 2 years. I'm trapped at this big company. I'm like, dude, it's not always a dude, but it's often a dude. You're not sticking it out for 2 years. As soon as you have a better idea, you're going to leave. It happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once in 15 years have I ever had somebody stick it out with the acquirer, and they stuck it out at Twitter in a classic rest invest scenario, which tells me an enormous amount about what that culture looks like. So, change that culture up and move those folks out and get rid of those yoga rooms. And maybe the company turns into a viable, exciting business. I don't know. I got no issue.
Yeah.
And he's doing, he's really pushing the edge on other stuff. I love any, like he takes most of his inspiration from the science fiction of his youth. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love the science fiction of my youth, and I love the science fiction of today. Most of the stuff, like the stuff you see behind me, is a lot of, Snow Crash is probably the single most influential book I've ever read. It's the reason I was able to take my company public.
Yeah.
So, and he's got lots of neat, interesting ideas that some will work. And I don't, I do think he's a very harsh taskmaster. Look, the reality of, I'm sure I'm in some version of a spectrum, not as severe as some, but like, I'm not quite at that level where I have absolutely no social awareness, but I have a finite amount.
Yeah.
Some people have none. And so when they say to their teams, we need to work Christmas, it's like, ouch. That one was probably that was like, that is.
Well, and even on a bigger scale, right? I don't argue with you that, in the long run, Elon with 250 hardworking people might be really good for Twitter. I don't know if the same can be said about free speech. And I promise I wouldn't get into politics on the podcast, but, having
free speech, I'm not,
yeah,
I consider myself an independent,
yeah,
conservative, socially liberal, fiscally, whatever.
Yeah.
Free speech only works if both sides can say whatever the hell they want. Like, I'm half Jewish. Do I like that Nazis get to go out and, rant with their crap? Absolutely not. But that's part of America.
Yeah.
What was it? Charleston, the Jews will not replace us. They have a right in our country to go out and spew that kind of bile.
Yeah.
And because they do, so does everybody else.
Yeah.
Now, I hope people are discerning and intelligent enough, but apparently they're not, to be able to filter through the crap and maybe do a little bit of research. I'll tell you that drives me insane. And this is something my youngest and I fight about sometimes. Like, look at the source data. The thing that fascinates me, like, in fairness, I don't use Facebook. Like, I post things on occasion as a way to spread the word to whoever the heck's friends with me on Facebook. I'm mainly LinkedIn and certainly Twitter. But I'm like, so that's it for you? You just see it there and you just take it as gospel, and so I'm supposed to worry about people with such a limited amount of ability to filter that whatever Facebook tells them is what they now believe to be the gospel, and that's good enough. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not religious. I'm an agnostic. But for many, look, this is not a new problem. You've had however long the Bible and other religions have existed of people having a very specific point of view of what reality is. And it came to them through their own version of that book that was presented to them as the truth, right? Maybe it is. Maybe they picked the right religion. I don't know, but I'm not a zealot about it. I don't really, you can believe what you want to believe. But I do think people should have we live in a country where we're allowed to say what we want. Yeah. And I would take that over China any day of the week, even though it means real scumbags get to march up and down streets and spew bile. I was watching the Blues Brothers again, and it's sort of a COVID movie. And there's this great scene where the neo-Nazis are wearing their arm badges with the swastika and they're marching. And then the Blues Brothers run them all off a bridge. This is so great. So clearly it was a thing back then too, right? Yeah. Like 70s or whatever, the Blues Brothers. So I don't mind. I thought it was, I'll make one last point here. I'm not a Martha Stewart fan, also somebody I've only met once, and I'm not negative on her either. But someone asked her once why she didn't take a stance on some topic. And she said, you know what? Half my readers are Democrats and half my readers are Republicans. I don't need to piss off either of them. I'm running a business.
Yeah.
Now, businesses have an obligation to follow the law. And they have an obligation to, like, you cannot hide behind creating optimizing shareholder value to do evil. That doesn't work, and it's been proven in court, and you will go to jail for it.
Yeah.
But it isn't your job to take a stance. I'm not saying you can't. If it's
No.
your company and your shareholders are behind you and that's what you want to do, fine. But it's it's like if you get to tell the telephone company they can't allow phone calls between certain types of people.
Yeah. Well, and I see that side of the argument, and I do believe that it's not Elon Musk's problem to fix with regards to how we communicate with one another, and how we choose who to believe and who not to believe based on a 40-second YouTube clip or TikTok video, whatever it might be.
Characters were currently allowed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think there's bigger problems afoot.
We want to fix all this. People should just listen to me. It'd be all good.
There you go, Ben. There you go.
But I
Well,
think you're
it's-
right. There's
yeah.
no
I'll tell you what it is.
context.
Yeah.
There's
You
not a
wanna-
lot of context.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
We talked about Elizabeth Holmes. We talked about Sam Bankman-Friedman. I'll add Adam Newman to that list.
Another person that I think has a interesting filter on the reality he's lived through.
Right. So just to stay on that, right? I think people look at venture capitalists as the backers of these leaders, right? These business leaders.
So I have a lot less issue with him. Like people mainly are just up in arms that Andreessen backed him again.
Yeah.
I'll say a couple of things. One, I wasn't in the room.
Yeah.
Okay? If you're not in the room, it really is pointless.
Yeah.
Because you don't know why, you don't know what happened. My understanding is an enormous amount of real estate, like $300 million or so.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it was a sweetheart deal. He puts in $300 million of real estate and they put in hundreds of millions of cash.
Yeah.
He did do something world changing.
Yeah.
Sometimes the second act is better. I'm not
Yeah.
it's an odd, they absolutely had to have gone through the exercise in that partner meeting
Sure.
of the blowback they would get from funding Adam Newman. And they
Yeah.
had to have decided that it was worth doing it. Now, I think that also tells you something about the firm, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like 7 VCs backed him. It was one.
Yeah.
So you can draw your own conclusions. It's funny. I was watching some random movie, whatever, made for TV series. I think it was The Story of Uber. And the guy that plays Bill Gurley, horribly cast, by the way, because Bill's tall.
Yeah.
I generally like Bill. Again, some of them I think I've had one lunch with, but you get to know a little bit over an hour.
Yeah.
And he says something like, we don't sue our founders. We'll leave that to Sequoia because Sequoia had recently engaged in a lawsuit. Somebody sued the founder of Uber, right? So you look at the sort of, I think Benchmark's a phenomenal firm. I think Sequoia's a phenomenal firm.
Yeah.
They're the two best venture firms, bar none.
Yeah.
I would love to be an LP in both, of which I am an LP in neither. Maybe
Yeah.
they'll say, hey, we'd love to have you.
But look, so Bill Gurley,
Sure.
Bill Gurley came out yesterday, or might have been today, with sort of the 5 red flags that should have been so glaringly obvious to investors to back them off of any investment in Sam. And Sequoia obviously famously came out and said, our investment in Alameda, et cetera, is so small comparative to all the assets under management. Like, we're doing just fine.
Yeah.
Well,
explicitly, they said we lost $150 million in a fund, which is already $7.5 billion to the good.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, I'd ignore the 150 and think about that 7.5. But $150 million is not small. I'm actually very surprised to have seen Sequoia and NAA on those cap tables. Because, I know when I was NAA, we talked about the fact that Theranos had pitched us and they were like, we need more data. And she said, no. And they're like, well, we can't talk to you. Very surprised. Like the whole FOMO sizzle thing, that usually doesn't pierce the armor of a tier 1 firm at that level.
Yeah.
But I think, at some point it had gotten so big and maybe it was so influential. And sometimes you're buying access.
Yeah.
Like there's a whole ecosystem around you.
Yeah.
You're getting access to. Now, look, at the end of the day, people fund Sequoia to make the money. And if they made them $7.5 billion on a single fund and then lost $150 million, I think they did just fine. So
Sure.
you've got to take outlier risk sometimes. It is not an issue that people don't know these issues are there. It's that they choose whether or not to accept them. The
Yeah.
business of venture is rational risk in exchange for ridiculous reward.
Yep.
When you look at something like what happened with Schlubby, you are making a conscious decision of whether you're willing to bear those additional risks that you know you are taking.
Mm-hmm.
Decide. And here's the problem. Sometimes legitimate entrepreneurs act exactly the same way.
Yeah.
I actually think this is a crisis that has been created by a finite number of accelerators and incubators and coaches and investors and entrepreneurs that have taught them that it's an adversarial relationship between the investor and the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
They should basically, what's the old saying? Treat the investors like mushrooms. Keep them in the dark and feed them shit. Right. And so this is a negative ecosystem reality that has been growing over time and is enormously problematic. I used to call them the self-inflicted wounds, which come back to haunt you later.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is when those methodologies are taught to say 224 entrepreneurs every 6 months, then those entrepreneurs come out and they're raising, you have to deal with the same risk factor across a whole bunch of them. And
Sure.
some were scammers and some were just jerks because they've been taught to be jerks.
Yeah.
Jerks. They just got trained poorly.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a bad dog. It's
Well,
a
so
dog.
and I bring this up though, Ben, because I think that obviously all of those founders and all of the firms that have backed those founders, they're in unique positions and unique stories around that, and details and the context is different. But journalists and luminaries in the tech industry have all kind of pointed to each of them and said, hey, venture is broken. And my question to you is the perception of venture broken? Or as you were saying, has everyone been taught fundamentally the wrong thing for a long enough period of time now where venture really truly is broken?
Well, there's a bunch of different pieces here. So
Yeah.
first of all, I don't think venture's broken. Secondly, I think the teachings that are negative, sadly, are on the founder side. And they are from a very fine, I'll give you, again, I like stories. So I had a company I was looking at doing the Series B for.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome, smart, driven female founder, great way of thinking about the world, real possibility of helping a lot of people. She could do well and she could do good. It wasn't a charitable effort, but it could have a lot of positive impact. I loved it. We had a very difficult debate, but in the end, we came to terms. We agreed on price, ownership, everything. Final docs. Yeah, you want a board seat? I need 3. I was like, no, we can't do that. This is a Series B. Series B, you keep 2. The Series A gets 1. I get 1. And then you nominate an independent because the board needs to be uneven. And that's the 5th. You nominate them, but we both approve them. Nope, I need total control. I need 3 board seats for the common. Like, yeah, I can't do that. It's inappropriate. She's like, why not? Well, I mean, I don't have any specific concerns with you, but I'll tell you, out of 125 companies in 15 years, I've had 2 entrepreneurs get hooked on drugs and have huge issues. How do I know what's going to happen? And by the way, I can't do anything about it. Only I and the Series A and the independent can take action.
Yeah.
No. So-and-so, I won't name him, told me I need control. I'm like, you're not Zuck, and I can't give it to you.
Yeah.
And I said, if that's what you need, I can't do it. And I walked away. I said, I will honor the deal I've given. I will not give you total control of the board. If you need that, you need to get it from somebody else. And she got it from somebody else because they wanted to invest enough that they gave her total and complete control. But my entrepreneurs will often ask me like why I care about, an acquirer will come along and buy the company and want reps from the VCs. VCs give these reps, private equity guys never do. We will represent that, everything's true and there's never a problem and we'll take responsibility for any issues forever after. It's like, how do I know what you've been doing? I've been there once a month. Like you could have literally been running an organ farm out of your basement. I don't think you are. I'm using the extreme to make the point.
Yep.
I would not know.
Yeah.
If you had an organ farm in your basement, I would not know that was the case. And later I would be the one that took the hit. Not going to happen. I can't represent to what I don't know. So But I don't think venture is broken. Venture has just become way more expensive. That's why I spun out of NEA to go back to seed.
Yeah.
Seeds where the big ass multiples still exist.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it was fun. And actually, it's also where the entrepreneurs actually care what I have to say.
Yeah.
Series C, I can make a lot of money. Nobody cares what I have to say. They just want the money that's quiet. They want the guy or gal that won't take the board seat, that will leave them alone, that'll just be like bid it as high as it can be and then just shut up and move on.
Yeah.
I mean, look, like I said, I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but I do enjoy helping. I enjoy being involved. Look, I suffered for 25 years to get to the point where I could do what I do today. As an entrepreneur, I would prefer if those are not one-time lessons.
Sure.
I'd prefer if they help others too. And
Yeah.
that is not going to happen at Series C.
Yeah. Amen to that. I want to lighten this up, and I know we're reaching the tail end of the recording here. Trevor Noah has a new stand-up special on Netflix, and on it, he suggests very jokingly that everyone should believe in a conspiracy theory. One such theory is predictive programming of The Simpsons. I know you're a big Simpsons fan. I don't know if you know that they've predicted everything from
I think
presidencies.
The Simpsons is always, and Seinfeld too, but The Simpsons even more so. Everything that's ever happened is in The Simpsons because it's the longest running show of all time.
Yeah.
It's got great writers. It's a real coup. One of my points of pride in the library is the Simpsons edition unopened.
Oh, that's cool.
Fantastic.
I love that. One of my
fantastic.
cousins.
So look, right behind it is the original Star Wars movie episode 4 book that you could get when you went to the theater.
Yeah.
Edition of Dungeons and Dragons, all my nerd stuff. I've got like my nerd cred runs deep.
So I don't know if you know this, but Musk tweeted.
Going back to D&D.
Oh, there you go.
So, anyway, I do think, but The Simpsons is more reactive than predictive for the most part. It just gets on it really quickly. And the reason it gets on it really quickly is I was reading this once because as a writer, I'm fascinated. I would love to write an episode for The Simpsons. Well, The Simpsons, writing an episode for The Simpsons is a huge honor. It is also incredibly and viciously competitive. Yeah. And because they've run for longer than any other show, pretty much everything that's already existed has been covered, which means you have to look for whatever's now. And that means you get, Homer on a podcast, or Homer at the Boring Company, or Homer going on the first manned mission to Mars, or whatever else. So they have no choice. They're not predictive so much as they are ultra current.
Yeah.
Because they have no other way to be.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they made a Homer coin, and I'm sure it busted.
Yeah.
Right? Actually, a Homer takes better care of himself than that guy.
Yeah. Well, I know the most recent was that Musk quoted season 26, episode 12 of The Simpsons as predicting his acquisition of Twitter. Wow. So there you go. But in honor of your nerdy love for The Simpsons, we went ahead and made you yellow.
Although I gotta say, you got the glasses all wrong there.
Okay,
these are the old glasses, I think. Now, these are not
but
the
I haven't
new
had those glasses in so many years.
In so many years.
And my hair's not that dark, is it? But I like it. It's cool. I mean, I don't know if it's gonna make my Twitter profile.
Well, this is a big miss if we don't.
As long as it's a tweet, we need a tweet. You don't need to necessarily.
Right, here's what I would do.
Your avatar.
Out the survey. Does this look like me?
That's right.
I have my genie. One of the companies then gave me my icon.
Yeah.
Just my Twitter profile picture.
Yeah.
It's an NFT. So I actually have an investment in an NFT company. Didn't start that way.
You do. And now you've got your second profile, not quite an NFT. Let's play 5 questions to end this out. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right. This is going to be rapid fire mode. So if you could do it all over again, let me revise this. Which are you happier as, a builder, founder, or an investor?
I think all entrepreneurs think about their time as an entrepreneur the way a mother thinks about childbirth. During the time, it's incredibly agonizing, and they would never consider doing it again. But amazingly, after the fact, they're good to go to have another one. And I think that's the way entrepreneurship is. In the rearview mirror, it's all glorious, but man, it's a painful ass grind. long hours, enormous amounts of pain, total uncertainty. You know, the nice thing is, like, being an investor, bluntly, is like being a grandparent. You get to play with the kids, but then you get to send them home, particularly as a seed investor, right? Because I'm not typically on boards. So I get to help when they fall down and skin their knee. I get to be there to cheer them on. But at the end of the day, I'm not the parent and I'm not responsible all the time. So I get to glory in their wonderful achievements and give them some candy and say, it'll all get better one day. But so I do love being an investor. I've been tempted for the first decade of investing. I started in 2007, so you can do the math. So yeah, we're at 15 years going into 16. For the first 5 or 6 or 7 years, I assumed I'd end up as an entrepreneur again. I'd find some business to take over or to run. But now I really like what I do. I like the vicarious. The thing is, like, so Tenacity has been around for about 15 months. We've made 15 investments, and these companies are just doing exceptionally well. 2 have raised Series A's, 2 are in the middle of raising Series A's right now. Yeah. 1 has grown 18x in 10 months. I mean, that's 15 journeys I get to live with. And we're not done. We're not done with Fund 1. So I do like where I am today. And as I said earlier, like, it took me a long time to realize so one of my entrepreneurs once came over. I used to say, hey, you can have me anytime you want, but if it's on the weekends or at night, you have to come to my house because I'm not going to leave the family for you. You have to come to me. Came over one weekend, questions. I said, you're not asking me about your business. You're searching for the meaning of life. And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I don't think there is a meaning of life. I think there's a meaning of life for each person, and they find it on their own. And by the way, it finds you. You don't find it. You can go travel the world as I did trying to find it, and it will elude you. But one day it will bubble up from your self-conscious or subconscious, and you will discover it. And for me, the meaning of life is that it is not about having what you want. It is about wanting what you have. And I very much want what I have. I love the family that I have. I love the career that I have. I love what I get to do. I love the entrepreneurs that I have. It is just awesome. It is easier to say that it is about wanting what you have, not having what you want when you have a relative abundance. I will certainly admit that. But I have seen people in all walks of life that have achieved happiness because of what they have being what they wanted to have. Even if it wasn't a material event.
Awesome. All right. Well, next question. What movie best fits the future of the human race? WALL-E, Avatar, or The Matrix?
Well, I mean, we're already at WALL-E level with the half of the country being overweight and a third being obese. But I'd say I don't worry that much. I don't think we need to go to Mars. I used to live in Incline Village. I would drive from Incline Village to La Jolla because they discontinued the direct flight to San Diego. It's about 7 hours. You know what there is in between those 2 points for 7 hours of 70-mile-an-hour driving? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
And yet there's oxygen, and I bet water, and maybe even power. Woo! And you don't even have to send any fancy robots there. So I'm not worried about us leaving this planet. Well, Avatar, pass that one. Like, come on, man, 10 years waiting to get the extra 10 episodes there. The Matrix is as close as, it's not our future, but certainly there's been a lot of debate about whether it requires brainstem insertion or piercing the skull to get truly immersive stuff. But everything in the Matrix is doable at some level, hopefully without a hole being drilled in my head.
Yeah. There's
a debate about that. I had an entrepreneur once tell me, he was pitching me on drilling holes. He said, Ben, eventually everybody's gonna get a hole drilled in their head. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. My mother doesn't have a computer. I only just got her an iPhone 2 years ago. I'm comfortably certain she's not getting a hole drilled in.
Yeah, no way.
So maybe everybody, and even me, mega nerd, probably not. Yeah. Because I have no confidence. I don't believe, it's funny, at TED 10, they presented the idea of the singularity. And I was like, oh my God, this is the biggest, oh my God, this is so huge. I got to live long enough to live forever. And then at TED 12, he presented again and nothing had changed. I was like, wait a minute, why hasn't anything changed? Well, technology takes a really long time. I'm like, yeah, but it's been 2 years. Something should have changed. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, have we ever designed a system that never crashes? I mean, even the FAA system, is that 100% reliable? Has it never crashed? So am I really going to trust a system to upload me? And by the way, if I did, just to go down to the matrix path, which is a little more of the singularity path. What I realized is, so I bought us a little Sony Aibo robot dog for our IPO. I returned it because I felt guilty that I spent $3,000 on a silly toy. But I thought about it. I was like, well, I guess if the singularity works, I could download myself into this robot dog and then, whatever.
Sure.
Then I thought, wait a minute. The robot dog and its progeny, copy, like when you make a copy of a CD, you have copies of the CD. But if you break the original CD, that CD's gone. The copies will stick around. And then I realized I won't live forever. A copy of me will.
Copy of you. Yeah.
And then I thought, that's going to really piss me off. I'm a pretty petty person. I don't think I'm going to let another version of me live forever.
Yeah.
F you, other person.
Yeah.
I'm me. You don't get to stick it out after I rot and die. So
Yeah.
I'm going to shut you down or bury you in a box and you're gone. So I worried that, maybe the singularity is back. It's an issue of the fact that I am not willing to be dead and rotting in the ground while you go on and live your merry life. You won't have a problem because you as a digital me will clone yourself. There's so many great sci-fi books on that,
Yeah.
but not the original one. I don't know that I'm a big enough person. I'm not going to think of this as my son. My son, I want to do better than me. I want him to outlive me. I want him to out-succeed me. I want everything to be better for my children, all of them. But this is me. And I'm sort of a pain in the ass. So I'm going to be a pain in the ass right back to me. Little me is going to be like, hey, man, how does it feel to know that you're going to rot and die and be eaten by worms while I go out and have a lot of fun doing whatever I want for thousands of years? And I'd be like, screw you, little me. Snap.
Yeah.
But what if
That's
you
what I
already
think
were a
about
copy,
singularity.
Ben? What if you already are a copy?
Yeah.
What?
What if you already are a copy?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm not.
You're the OG.
Yeah, I don't think we're living in the matrix.
Yeah.
Although it is amazing sometimes when you have, I'm not a wakeful dreaming guy. I wish I was. Dreaming's the coolest. But you do have dreams sometimes. There's two types of dreams. So the dreams where you don't know you're in a dream and you're like, the detail is pretty amazing as far as I can tell. And then there's the dreams, the coolest of all, where you figure out you're in a dream. That's only happened to me like twice in my life ever. And then I had to take control. And one of them was a flying dream, which was so cool, except I couldn't, once I knew it was a dream, I couldn't get true flying. I would only like lightly hover. And I was like, damn it, I ruined it. And then I remember when I was a little kid, it's funny the things you remember. Must have been 10, 12. I knew I was in a dream. And there were all these things that I liked, whatever, presents, toys. So I took them all and I hid them in the closet. And then when I woke up, I ran to the closet and they weren't there. If people haven't read it and they like the idea of the singularity, one of my favorite, there's a series by Tad Williams called Otherland. It's
Okay.
exceptionally well done. That's on the shelf.
All right. So here we go. Question number 3. Would you rather spend $1 million on a trip to Earth's outer orbit or $1 million on a vacation anywhere on the planet Earth?
Well, you probably know where I'm going with that one. I don't know that.
Yeah.
Whatever. I get to go up and see something. So the nice thing is here's the problem. I am an optimizer, and sometimes it's problematic. So the choice you've given me tells me that I can be in outer orbit for a relatively short period of time, or take a 10-year journey through Europe. And guess which one I'm going to do?
Oh, yeah.
For $1 million, man, I've got a private train and a private car and a private helicopter, and I'm just traveling around Europe for
All the cheese and
long
wine.
time. So you didn't
could
time
possibly-
bracket it. So if it was like
Yeah.
1 day in space or 1 week somewhere for $1 million, it might have been a hard choice. But now, easy, I
Yeah.
spent $10 million, and or however much it was. It $1 million? That's still $100,000 a year. That's a pretty nice vacation.
I think we don't time bracket it for a reason, because then we get answers like the one we just got.
Yeah, no,
And we know where you lie. We know the real Ben.
Also, I'm pretty sure I can't take my wife with me to space. And the vacation, she's incremental, so the +1 has no real impact on the cost.
Correct. Yeah,
So,
this is all.
yeah.
These are very good points for.
By the way, the
future
other
guests
thing I
to-
would
to
do, I'll
think
tell
through.
you from the way I utilize my HSA in the same way, is it would really be a $1,000 vacation with $999,000 of solid gold accoutrement to make sure it was an enjoyable trip.
There you go.
At value per ounce.
Mm.
'Cause I
Okay.
think I would have to buy the $999,000 of gold, shape it into, I don't know, maybe a luggage cart, and then take a Southwest flight to Vegas.
Nice.
Huh. Okay. There you go.
Okay.
The real answer is I'll take the $1 million.
Okay. Next question.
Yeah. Next question. Bree.
Now, you weren't in the room, but would you invest in Adam Newman's flow?
I doubt it.
Yeah, me neither.
I mean, it's impossible to answer because I wasn't there to hear the story and everything about it. And the reason I wouldn't invest probably is that it is extraordinarily hard for people that have made a lot of money to work hard enough the second time to do it again. You are just too comfortable. I had a founder once who came to me and I backed him alongside a USVP and NEA. I'll say the firms, I won't say the name of the company. And the founder was older, even older than me. And he said, Ben, I've done 5 companies and 2 have gone public, maybe 4 companies. This was his 5th. 2 have gone public and 2 have failed. You're in good shape because the even numbers fail, but the odd numbers go public. And this is my 5th. Great. Good to hear. Now, in addition to that, that's not why I invested. It was a great idea. It didn't work out. We lost all our money. But when I went to present it to my partnership, I said, look, the number one issue we have here is this guy has done too well and made too much money. If times get tough, he is not landing this plane. There is no talent acquisition. There is no selling it for pieces and getting pennies on the dollar. There is no getting our money out because somebody bought it for him to be an influential person like the people that bought Nest. This is a zero if it doesn't work. He will not get it sold. And he didn't. And we lost all our money. And that's okay. That's part of venture. I've had, venture in general has about a 40% failure rate. My history apparently is 33%, which considering that I go earlier than venture with seed versus series A, is somewhat interesting.
Yeah.
But, you cannot have the kind of phenomenal upside return possibilities in venture if you don't take the risk of losing all your money.
Yeah.
But when you got that sort of risk, if it doesn't, the guy's he's already a billionaire, right? There are very few people at that level that still have the motivation.
Yeah.
Dave Duffield, Larry Ellison, Elon Musk. That's probably it. And the thing is, they need bluntly, a human flaw, something where it will never be big enough. There is some hole in them somehow, or some competitive spirit. Let's take it. The negative example would be the hole. The positive example would be the competitive spirit will never be quenched. But there is an unfillable thirst that no amount of capital can ever fill. Yeah. And those folks are extraordinarily rare, can make you an enormous amount of money, but man, I would not want to lead their life. That is the exact opposite of life. It's not about having what you want, it's about wanting what you have. That is all about a constant, never-ending need to have the things you think you need, whatever that would be. And maybe that is just success. And Elon's already the wealthiest man in the world. There's not, I don't even know what goals are that drive him. Maybe it's the conquering of space, but it's harder. It is really, really, really hard for particularly successful people to succeed again when they're so comfortable they don't have to. Dirt poor is an enormous advantage.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so on the flip side, for our 5th and final question, what is the one deal, and we're going to hold you to it, that you passed on that you wish you hadn't, and you have to name the company?
Well, I don't wish I hadn't, but I will tell you the deal that I was my history is such that I have only one that I can ever remember where I was 100% absolutely positively wrong. I may have been wrong in other levels in other companies, but I've never noticed anything go on to such huge success. And it's a company that Benchmark backed, and they are a website building company. And I've forgotten the name. I think it's Israeli. It's public. It's worth a few billion, at least. And you know which one I'm thinking of?
I do. And now oh boy.
So you'll figure it out as I tell you the story. So a friend of mine who's Israeli brought me this company, and they presented to me, they hadn't raised an A yet. And they said, what do you think? I'm like, why is this novel? Why is this defensible? You've had web building programs like Page Builder since the 90s. How is this going to matter? Well, it's so much higher level, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. I think this is a solved problem.
Yeah.
And then apparently it wasn't, because Benchmark funded them. It's a multi-billion-dollar public company. So I was way, way, way wrong on that one. I still don't quite know why the spread was so big between the decade of web building tools that have been created for people to build their own. It wasn't Squarespace.
No.
Heck, it's going to bug me.
Wix
Yes, that was it. So that one I was just wrong on. But the one I regret was SentinelOne. Again, Israelis, security, which I don't invest in. I met them their first day in the country. I judged them across 8 companies. I loved them. I thought they were awesome. Their background was perfect. Everything they said was awesome. I was like, I need to back these guys. I reached out to 2 people. I won't name him. He knows who he is. A partner at Lightspeed, who does security, and a guy at a large security company that did M&A. I brought them in to meet both of them. And they both said, wow, I know why you like these guys. They're super smart, Ben, but it's a really crowded space. And I said, oh, I thought it was new. I thought it was novel. Nope. A lot of people going after this right now. A lot of people. I was like, oh, well, I guess it's that cat in a room thing. I don't know what I don't know. I guess I better pass. Then I think it was either Excel or Menlo phone them. They called me and said, hey, you were really valuable to us. If you want, you can participate. And I said, you know, I don't know what I don't know here. I'm going to have to pass. Idiot. Right? What's that? $10 billion. Anyway, I ran into the guy from Lightspeed, who I'm not naming, could be one of 2 or 3 people, but we all know who it is. At least he and I know who it is. You don't know who it is.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, thanks, by the way, for SentinelOne. He's like, what do you mean? I bid on them in the Series A. I'm like, yeah. And I brought them to you for the seed. And you talked me out. He's like, oh my God, I can't remember. You remembered that? It was like 8 years ago. You're like an elephant. I'm like, yeah, an Evo.
Yeah, you don't forget those ones.
And I never forgive. And he's like, yeah. I said, you told me it was a crowded space. He said, well, it was, but in fairness, I just didn't understand how incompetent the existing people were. I'm like, well, that didn't help me. Just multiply my ownership by the value today, and that's how much it cost me. Why don't you cough up a check? Anyway, so yeah, no,
Wow.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
One I regret, because I will tell you why I regret it. I regret it because I didn't trust my gut. My gut said do the deal, and I let 2 guys that I respected and that were smart and that knew the category talk me out of it. I let the old guys, and they weren't even old. They were younger than me, and they talked me out of the deal. They didn't talk me out of it. They didn't say don't do it. They said it's a crowded space.
It's a crowded space.
I got worried, and I overanalyzed it, and I left a beautiful public company off my track record.
Yeah. Well, listen, Ben, thank you for playing 5 questions with us. As a symbol of our thanks, we have one more gift that needs to be unpacked.
All right.
And you know what it is.
It is I brought scissors.
There you go.
It's one of those indestructible plastic bags that cannot be opened by any means other than a sharp blade.
That's right.
And it says
many of VCs have been
not
felt,
open.
yes, by the blades that they've used to open up this bag. So be
well,
careful.
I was prepared because you gave me a week to know that I had to open it. And it's right after Thanksgiving, but before Christmas. If it wasn't for the show, I would put it under
put it under the tree. You can
just rewrap
repackage it. Yeah, exactly.
Ta-da!
There you go.
Oh,
We've got a Drinks with a VC Patagonia vest, which, depending on the news outlet, may or may not be in style.
Well, now you can't get them anymore, right? Didn't they boycott all swag because whatever their version of it destroys the planet would be?
Yeah.
We went and bought a bunch of vests. You
got ahead of it. You wanted to get that.
Yeah.
Put that spike through Mother Earth.
Apparently, Business Insider reported that the vest is out and that now it's all about designer shoes. And
I saw that somebody was tweeting that was hard-hitting journalism.
That was.
I'm a paid contributor for Business Insider, so I can only say they're a phenomenal outlet to be able to write for.
Yeah.
But
there you go.
I do. It's funny. I finally, literally within the last 6 months, bought my first pair of Allbirds, and I live in Atherton. A lot of VCs right here, and I went out with some friends, and they're like, oh, please, God, Ben, no, tell me you didn't go with the VC shoes. I was like, you know what? I don't wear socks anyway, and they're comfortable. So,
well, as we do to end out every one of our episodes, we want to give you the last word and to cheers us out. It is your 20 seconds to bring attention to a cause that you love, a family member that you want to say hi to, a portfolio company that you want to extol and bring more visibility to. Now's your moment. And I just want to say on behalf of both Bree and I how thankful we are that you joined us tonight. And it's just been a huge pleasure. Better than I had hoped, and my expectations were very high.
And thank you for having me. Here's your final cheers. So I'll just point everybody to the LinkedIn page for Tenacity Venture Capital, because you'll find all my wonderful portfolio companies there, many of my entrepreneurs, the dogs I'd like to see adopted. Those are probably on the Ben Narasin LinkedIn page. But my family won't watch this. They don't care what I do. My wife has no idea. If you ask my wife what I did for a living, she'd say, I think it's something to do with investments. Yeah. But it's just a conscious decision on their part to tune it out. Although there's lots of entrepreneurs around, so they sort of get it by osmosis. But also it's being redone right now. But for any entrepreneurs out there that want to reach us, it's www.pitch-ben.com. And you can pitch me your idea. And I promise you a video response, video in, video out. But check the Tenacity Venture Capital webpage. It's really not a webpage, it's LinkedIn. And hopefully when it's ready to go back up, which will be soon, it'll be there for you to pitch your ideas, because I do love to hear those ideas. And even though I only funded tiny, here's the last thing I'll say. We'll see 5,000 pitches this year. We'll fund 10 to 15. So most of the time when you pitch me on pitch-ben.com, you're going to get feedback and advice. But every once in a while I fund somebody there. So might as well give it a try.
Hey, and that's fantastic. And I think words to every founder's ears out there that you're accessible, and we're excited for this next journey of your investment career. And thank you again for joining us on the show.
Thank you. A lot of fun.
Cheers. Catch full episodes of Drinks with a VC on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, and on YouTube for video. Be sure to subscribe for the latest episode drops.